on our page. You have that same picture, all right, that was on that slide. We're going to use this as a reference to create our own drawing down here. Sometimes students are like, well, why are we learning to draw buildings? Well, that is what we live in, all right? We are in buildings every day. There's architecture, there's designers who create these, and as that, they're a part of our world. So we want to kind of understand how this works, how things are built and kind of put together, so that some of us might one day go be an architect, or if not, we can appreciate what it takes to kind of create these buildings and how they're put together. So we've got a large rectangle, so kind of treat that as your piece of paper. I'm going to take my paper ruler and we're going to be measuring in inches. And the first thing that you're going to do is line it up probably with the top. That makes it square. I'm going to measure down 2.5 inches and put a large dot. I'm going to do that on the right hand side, and I'm going to move it over and do the exact same thing on the left. You're going to notice again we're measuring the same distance down. So these 2 points, these will be our vanishing points, and they are straight across from each other. And again, I've measured 2.5 inches down on each side, and that's about halfway. So after I've measured down 2.5 inches on each side, then I'm going to get ready to start placing my buildings. When we look at our example, the first building that we're going to put is, of course, the one on the corner, because that's our perspective. We're looking at a building from the corner side. So what I'm going to look at is this line that creates the corner. All right, looking at that line, this is what creates the height of the building. You're going to notice if I put my pencil up here and kind of connect those two dots, the building is taller than the vanishing points, and it also goes down below. All right, so we want to make sure that this corner line that we draw goes below those two horizon lines so that we have a good perspective and we're kind of filling our space. So I'm going to take my ruler, and on the bottom place where we're kind of sketching and learning how to plan this out, I'm going to draw a line very close to the center. And if you're trying to create a straight line, you can always take your ruler and line it up with either like this bottom piece of your paper so that you know that it's straight up and down, because sometimes we have a hard time with that. And again, you're deciding how tall you want that building to be. You want to make sure that it goes up a good distance up into the paper, and it also comes down below those two vanishing points. I'm also going to draw really dark and use a really dark valued pencil so that it shows up on the screen. You always want to make sure that you draw really lightly so that you can erase these things. Again, this is just to learn how to do this. This is just sketching and planning. But when you do your actual project, some of these lines you're going to want to erase. And if they show up in your project through other buildings, kind of takes away from some of the craftsmanship. So make sure that you are drawing really light so that you can see your lines. I'm going to draw these really dark so you can see them. So once I have that line in the middle, all right, I'm going to look at how to create the edges. Again, anything on the right-hand side goes to the right vanishing point. Anything on the left goes to the left vanishing point. So I'm going to create the top of my building, and I'm going to create the bottoms of it. If we look at it, and I pull my ruler up here, we'll notice on the example, all of the buildings on the bottoms of them line up with that angle. All right. The tops of them, because they're all different heights, kind of go up and below that. So we'll have to kind of make some choices here of how tall we want our buildings to be. So to create the bottom, I'm going to take my ruler and line it up with my vanishing point and the bottom of my building. I'm going to draw a line that connects them. We're going to do that for the top and the bottom. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do that on the right hand side, and I'm going to do the same thing on the left hand, connecting the top of the building to the vanishing point and the bottom of the building's corner to the left vanishing point. It could be moved over, like it doesn't have to be dead center. Alright, so next step is going to be determining how wide you want that building to be, and we're going to be putting in the right side of the building and the left side of the building. So I'm going to take my ruler. Again, this is going to be a line that's straight up and down. I'm going to decide how wide I want my building to be, and just in between those guidelines, I'm going to create a line that goes up and down on both sides. Alright, and by putting that line on the right hand side and the left hand side, now I have like my first building that's placed in there, and it's in correct perspective because each of these lines are going back into space. And when we look at our building, and if you look at it a little bit closer, we can look at our details. Alright, so doors, windows, banners, signs, everything. Again, the sides of them are going to be straight up and down, and the tops of the doors are going to go to that point. The bottom of the windows, the tops of the windows, those are all going to go to that vanishing point. Remember, the sides are always straight up and down. So when I'm looking at this building, I'm going to put an entryway in it. So I'm going to put a door on the right hand side. First thing I'm going to do is decide how tall I want that door to be. So on the left hand side, I'm going to draw a line that's straight up and down. And again, I'm drawing the left-hand side of the doorway. And then I can take my ruler and line it up with the top of that and my vanishing point, and I can decide how wide I want my door to be. And then to complete my door, then I will put the right hand side on it. Again, a line that's straight up and down. And that'll create that open way spot for my door. The other thing that you'll have to think about is windows for your building. If you're doing something that's like a business or something, or a city building, a lot of times you're going to have multiple rows of windows. And so it's best when we're drawing these, I can take my ruler and I can draw both sets of windows at the same time because I've got that angle that I need. So I can draw one set and two sets, and I can have them planned out before I get started. So I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to take my ruler again, deciding where I want the left-hand side of the windows to start. And since I'm putting 2 in here, I'm going to make one up closer to the top and then one towards the bottom here. And I'm going to draw both of those little left-hand sides at the same time so that they line up. Alright, and then just like the top and the bottom of the building, we're going to do the windows the same way. So I'm going to take the bottom of the window to the vanishing point. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my line all the way across here. And then I can kind of divide it up into windows once I'm ready. Again, draw really light because some of this you may want to erase. Once I have those windows tops and bottoms figured out, then I can, again, just like the right side of the building, I can create the right side of the windows. If I've got any like leftover lines or anything, I can always erase those out. And this is where I can then split them into multiple windows if I wanted to. So I could draw a line down the center and make them into 4 windows. I could put 2 lines in the center where I leave a little space in between. And if I did that, then I could have that kind of interesting little shape. Or I could erase out the top and the bottom, and that could be like the building wall. So that we have 4 very separate windows. So again, you can see that it's important for you to draw really light. So if you make some edits and some changes, you want to be able to get rid of those lines. Yeah. Not in like your buildings when you design them. They could be other shapes. For now, just to simply get them in the right spot, we're just working on squares and rectangles. Alright, so anything on the right hand side, we always start with that left hand side because that determines how tall it is. And then we can do the tops and the bottoms of it because that gets the angle in there that we need, and then we can complete our shape by putting in the right hand side. We're going to do the opposite on this side. Alright, so on this side, if we look at our example, it's got like a window and it's got multiple up here. So we can do whatever kind of we want to at this point. On this side, just kind of keep it simple, I think I'm going to do like a big billboard or like an advertisement. So now I'm working on the left-hand side of the building. So I'm going to start with the right-hand side of whatever I'm going to draw, a window, a door, a shape. So I'm going to decide where it's going to start. Again, I'm going to do like a big billboard on the side of this building. So I'm going to draw the right-hand side first. And then same thing as the other side, but just I'm going to take the bottom to my left-hand vanishing point as well as the top. Bringing it over as far as I want that sign to be. Top and bottom. and then complete it with a straight up and down line. And then I've got my very first building that I've drawn. So it's kind of sitting on its own. Again, this is our corner. We've got our details on the right, our details on the left. And we're going to start adding some more buildings to this. All right, so to do that, I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to get rid of this extra line on this side. Keep in mind that mine's not going to go away because I drew really dark so that it would show up on the screen. But you should draw light enough so that you'll be able to get rid of that. If we're looking at our example, this one has like 1, 2, 3 more buildings in there. Just for practice, we're going to do one building on this side and we're going to do one building on that side. Okay, so keep that in mind. We're not going to do so many just for practice. So the first thing that I'm going to do then is I'm going to put one more building on this side. So my very first step is again to start with that corner. I can decide if that building is shorter than this building. It could be the same height or it could be taller. So for this one, I'm going to make this building taller. So I'm going to do a line that's straight up and down. And again, this is the corner of the second building that I'm drawing. And then I'm going to repeat my steps the same as before. The bottom already has that line drawn for me because all of my buildings will sit along the same line. Okay? So then I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to connect the top of this corner with my vanishing point. The closer that you get to the vanishing point, the more dramatic these angles are. All right? Because literally they're disappearing into space at this point. So all these lines have to angle in pretty quick. On the left-hand side, I'm going to do the same thing. So the left-hand vanishing point is going to go to here. And my left-hand corner is going to go to my left vanishing point here. The only problem is now I've got a building in the way. So I have to kind of work around it. So I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to line it up with the top and my vanishing point. And I'm just going to draw my building over to the center building and stop. Because we've got that overlap, this building covers up the back side of this one, so I don't see it. At the bottom, I'm going to line it up again with the corner of my building and my vanishing point and draw my line over and stop. And what that does is that creates this little alleyway. If you look at your example, that's there. So there's space in between these buildings. So that's why we have that space that's right here. And sometimes I just shade it in so I don't get confused because that's like the ground and this is the side of the building. So this would be a great place for like sometimes there's parking lots or like dumpsters and deliveries and stuff that happen in between buildings. I'm going to decide how wide I want this building to be on the right hand side. Kind of give myself a cutoff. And then we'll go through and we'll do just like we did before, like putting some details in, putting some windows in. This one I think I'm going to make like a parking garage. So I'm going to make a really big door. So that it has something that like cars could drive into. I started with the left-hand side because I'm on the right-hand side of the building. And then I line my ruler up to get that angle, decide how wide I want my doorway to be, and then a line that goes straight up and down to create the right-hand side. If I wanted this to be like a garage, if you want to put siding on a house, if you want to have bricks, if we draw any lines, they're all going to go, again, off into space. So on this side, I'm going to decide how wide I want my lines to be, just by making little marks. And then I'm going to line my ruler up with those marks, and they're going to go to that vanishing point as well, so that they are in correct perspective, and they get smaller as they go back into space. And again, this will work really well for like blinds, garage doors, vinyl siding, or bricks if you're going to have a brick building. So we've done these two buildings together. The third building, I'm going to have you go do that on your own, and then I'll kind of walk around the room and help you out. We'll also take a look at these and see if there's anything that's not quite right in perspective, because this is where we want to make mistakes. And this is where I expect you to make some mistakes, because it's different. It's not something that everyone has done before. So we want to make sure that we can kind of figure out what we're doing wrong and kind of move forward from there. The other thing that our building has is it has like a sidewalk that goes around it. So we're going to talk about that. Again, we're starting at the corner and then coming down, and this tells us how wide our sidewalk is. And then everything again goes to that vanishing point. So in my drawing, I'm going to decide how wide I want my sidewalk to be. So I'm coming down from the corner. I'm just going to give myself a little dot so that I know where my starting point is. And then I'm going to take the right-hand side to my right vanishing point, and my left hand to the left side. And again, everything's always going to disappear that goes back into space. The other thing that our example has is we see kind of the side of the sidewalk, kind of where it goes into the curve. So I'm going to take and create a little small line that goes straight down, and then connect the bottom of that to my right and my left vanishing points. I'm just going to shade it in a little bit so that I can see that it's like the side of it that has a little bit of a shadow to it. Someone asked earlier today, well, how do you get the lines that go in the sidewalk? Meaning that, sidewalks poured in those sections, and then those boards that create those little lines that go across. So if I want to get the correct lines, I'm going to line my ruler up with the bottoms of my building so it goes to that vanishing point. And I'm just going to extend that line past the corner across the sidewalk. And so that creates that first piece. And what happens is if I want to create the lines going back into space in the correct angle, I'm going to leave this side stuck on that point, and I'm going to pivot it. Meaning that here on the left-hand side, I'm not going to move this. I'm going to hold it in place with my finger. And then this, I can then move up, and I can draw those lines across however wide I want my little pieces of concrete to be. I'll do that exactly for the right side as well. So again, lining up with the vanishing point, it matches the bottoms of those buildings. And extend my line across from the corner. It'll pivot from this right hand side, so I'm going to hold it in place with my hand and then move it up and draw each of my lines with only the left hand side of the ruler going up. And now I've got my sidewalk in there. So now we're going to finish up sidewalks and any other details we need to do. And then we're going to put our next building in. Again, I'm going to have you do that on your own so that if you start moving through this and you have some questions, we can kind of ask. So we start with the corner of the building, and then again, we're going to match up the tops with left and right vanishing point. Remember that it's going to run into that building that's in the middle, and that's okay. I'm just going to stop my lines there. Got the left side of my building. And then give that building some kind of detail, whether it's a doorway or windows or a sign, like something going on.